maybe I'm just living in an echo chamber, but I feel like there's an increasing awareness, not only of what's happening in the volatility derivatives complex, but potential implications for reflexivity in the market itself. A lot of people talking about things like GEX and pinning, and that sort of effect seems to be much more prevalent. But also just, it seems like more people are aware that, selling calls, for example, that volatility risk premium may not be actually in practice anymore as wide as it was historically in these wonderful back tests. As you guys are going out there and talking to institutions, how is that story resonating with them? I would have to imagine for those institutions that have adopted these types and styles of strategies, even if it's just selling some upside calls, it's got to be a wake-up call to them.
I would say, there's really bifurcation, right? Sophisticated institutions that have people who have worked in the derivative space before understand all this and are quite aware of it, right? But those usually aren't the institutions that have those kind of mandates in the first place or have those kind of programs, right? It's much more, you can't underestimate the pension fund consultant, pension, academic white paper, exchange white paper complex of decision making, right? Which is, we look at the pension fund consultants really advise quite heavily, right, in terms of what does it make sense to be doing and how should you think about these things. Public pensions are understaffed and underpaid and have a hard time really having the staff, the analytical capabilities internally to investigate these kind of things, right? So they largely adopt the kind of decisions that the consultants push.
Right. Yeah, I think really the punchline is, like when you think about option strategies at the index level, certainly options have become steadily less expensive over time. It's a nice way of putting it. So if you're selling those, you're obviously bringing in less premium. But things ebb and flow, just like with any risk premium that will rise and fall. We just happen to be in a very compressed level of risk premium for specifically volatility risk premium or VRP today.
And especially again at the front of the curve is what we're talking about.
Correct.
Which is typically where your benchmarky oriented call right programs are going to go sell 1 month 25 delta puts or 2 month 25 delta puts or something like that, right? Related skew is also pretty high. Now that does come and go. That I think partly also is a result of a fairly persistent wave of hedging by a lot of different categories of investors this last 6 months to a year, with markets pushing new highs and people feeling really good about their gains, but less certain about the market environment going forward and so forth. But skew is extremely steep. So I think people have this sense of, right, they look at the VIX and they say, oh, vol is really high. Like, haven't you seen the VIX? It's 18 or it's 17 or it's, that used to be like when people anchor on the last 5 years, other than COVID, they almost think of that as like a stress level, right? So these kind of strategies must make sense, but again, sort of short dated S&P near the money vol or upside vol might be 5 or 6, right? So the thing that has definitely been true post COVID has been the wings have been expensive, right? VIX is actually S&P variance, right? It's not at the money vol. And variance is something that is like a thermonuclear bomb when you sell it or whatever, right? It's most of the time you make a little more money selling variance than you would selling at the money, except for once every 5 or 10 years when things go really wrong and you lose, and you have a squared term in your negative P&L, right? And you just blow up. And the supply of short-term variance has totally stopped, right? No one can sell one month variance anymore. And so the level of the VIX, as compared to, say, at the money vol, is much higher, might be 5 or 6 points higher, which historically would be very, very elevated. Again, because it's the price of the wings that's expensive, not the short dated at the money vol.